Hello, America, and to our friends around the world. Welcome to the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time, and hopefully one enslaved soul at a time. We exist to enlighten and perhaps motivate to action, positive action, not violent action, not negative action, but positive action to affect change for God, family, country. And we have a special place in our heart for the oppressed. And right now, the mainstream of America is oppressed, and it's about ready to get a lot worse. I want to follow up with what I talked about yesterday, with I have really good sources that say we are going boots on the ground, and there's no question about it. It'll happen after the midterms for obvious reasons, and it will happen before spring. And there's a military reason why, too. It's just too darn hot to invade Iran right now, and temperatures will cool significantly. And that gives you a hint that this isn't going to be a mountainous operation per se, but where they're going to be going right now is very warm. That narrows it down somewhat. But I want to take a minute and follow up with this because a draft is here. And as I look back on the events when Trump made it automatic that you're registered when you're 18 and have a license, well, this is really interesting. They've known for some time this is coming. There's no question. And you've got the Board of Peace that Donald Trump is the head of. Jared Kushner's on it. That should be a red flag right there. And then members of 30 national leaders, and you've got Susie Wiles, Witkoff, and we've talked about their conflicts of interest, particularly with allegiance towards Israel over America. Nothing wrong with being aligned with Israel philosophically. You like the culture, you like the history, but to the expense of your own nation that you're sworn to uphold. But the Board of Peace, their first primary objective, and they're recognized by the UN and the World Economic Forum, is to basically colonize Gaza for the elite. 15-minute city concepts, high tech, and it's just the beginning, and it's part of the greater Israel project. And we're going to tell you exactly why and how I know this, and we're going to talk about what it means for you, the American taxpayer, and what it means for your kids, the future draftees, following up on yesterday's story. But anyway, you know who we are, you know what we do here, and you know we have a great sponsor, but let me just get to a current event here real quick to set this up. I made a prediction on Kim Iverson's show back in mid-May, and I told Kim and her audience, I said, if we don't end this war nearly immediately, certainly by Memorial Day, we are going to be in a world of hurt for quite some time because we're going to basically have huge oil problems. Now, J.D. Vance let that slip, and so did Trump. J.D. Vance in a speech, Trump at the G7 conference, we only have enough oil for reserve oil for 4 more weeks. What? Really? And who do you think is going to get the priority on usages of oil? Do you think it's going to be you or the military industrial complex? Okay, well, you know the answer to that question. So as we get into this, here's what I'm telling you. Severe supply chain disruptions, I believe, are in our future. And you better stock up on needed materials. Now, getting prescriptions ahead of time is near impossible in this tightly controlled medical market. So you have to look natural. And I'd say go with what you know works. And you've heard me talk about this absolutely positively. And what I'm going to tell you is this is what works. It brought me back from death's doorstep. I would not be here today doing what I'm doing if it weren't for the nanosoma liquid spray that boosts your immune system to unbelievable levels. 30 peer-reviewed research studies shows this. Then when you start working out and you go, oh, the muscles hurt. Now the joints are kicking in. Oh my gosh, that's back. Okay, well, rub the gel on because it creates pluripotent stem cells, and this has a calming effect on your joints, and it begins to cushion the joints with the pluripotent stem cells. And today I'm doing things I haven't done in over a quarter of a century, and you've heard me say that quite a bit. And then there's the skin cream for, well, cuts, burns, and some people use it for vanity, fine lines, and wrinkles. Together, this is the starter pack, 15% off retail price. These are products that you need to have in your medicine cabinet, given what is likely to come. With severe shortages, I'll tell you, the Nanosoma liquid spray will be indispensable to you. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to iwantmyhealthback.com/Dave Hodges. iwantmyhealthback.com/Dave Hodges. Okay, here we go. I want to just go through just some common sense things here. Before the break, I talked about the Board of Peace, and this totally caught me off guard. Why would Trump, at that time, appearing to be a really strong nationalist, the most strongly nationalist president we've had, certainly since Ronald Reagan, why would he be in something like this? And at the same time, when this was announced, he stopped talking about a third term. And there is a constitutional argument that could be made that he's entitled to a third term because of the discontinuity of service. I think the Supreme Court would strike that down, but I understand why some people think this can happen. And all of a sudden, that talk went away, and he doesn't even mention the Board of Peace, but it's public. We've published their group picture, we've identified their members, we've talked about their stated mission, and this is at work to get the Greater Israel Project. Mike Huckabee basically made, not basically, he directly made this statement to Tucker Carlson in an interview. The ambassador to Israel said this: Israel has a right to control the entire Middle East. Whoa, whoa. Well, we're now calling this, it's in our national security interest. And so much to the point where Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act is merging the upper levels of Israeli military with ours, and there'll be no secrets, no technology, no limits on how much they can take for their efforts. That's right, because it's one and the same. They just requisition it and off they go. And you're going to be paying taxes for Israel fighting their wars for the Greater Israel establishment, such as fighting in Lebanon. Jordan may be next. Turkey, certainly. And you're going to be paying for their war with your tax dollars. And with Iran, and this is the point that I wanted to get to about where this is all leading in the immediate future, I've got too many good sources. And by the way, you say, well, Dave, how'd you get these sources? Well, I come by it naturally. I was recruited into this stuff, and my dad prevented it. And I was recruited into it 3 times. I tiptoed into it financially with some financial stuff all above board and legal. And then I realized it was headed in the same direction my dad warned me off against. But he was high level intel, worked with German scientists, reverse engineering, theoretical physics. And he did so starting in the late 50s, where he was retired early from the Navy with full benefits. Yeah, 6 months early. They don't do that unless they got a mission for you that you can only do as a civilian. So that's what they did. And what's really interesting about this is he established contacts. We had family friends, and we went through lockstep with these family friends. And I'm still in contact with kids of family friends who ended up following in their father's footsteps. And one leads to another. Then you meet people like Stephen Benoon. And then I met 2 people who are great sources of mine when we were fighting for our property preservation. And this was in 4 areas in Arizona. And I think they miscalculated because they took on one person's property that was extremely involved in high-level military establishment. And he's a avenging crusader now. And I fear for him too. And so you say, well, how do you get this information? And then these people have sources. And sometimes you get introduced to these sources. And what I'm telling you is not unlike what some of the other people that you watch or listen to when they say they have sources. Some of these sources, sometimes we can name. Stephen Benoon has gone public. I think much to his danger, should I say. And, Stephen and I just did a joint broadcast, about 3 weeks ago, and we aired good portions of that. We had to break that up into segments because we were all over the map. But this is how we get this information. And what I'm telling you is when you hear things from different angles, not the same family of intel, but different angles, the estimate is somewhere around 60,000 U.S. troops going into Iran between December 1st, after the midterm elections, up until March. You have a cooling period climate-wise, which makes military operations more sustainable. You won't have the high desert winds that can disrupt helicopter and drone operations. And this all is making sense. I think Karg Island will clearly be a target, but will not be the only target. And I don't know how we're going to hold Karg Island since we can't repulse these incoming missiles. Iran will destroy part of itself before they give you an inch of their oil. I think this is a flawed project from the beginning, but we are going to see massive body bags coming home. And this is ultimately for the Greater Israel Project. And your kids are going to be sacrificed so Israel can gain. But Israel's not the only one that's going to gain. And this is something that I want you to realize. There's a bigger entity involved in this, and it's centered in this board of peace. There is money to be made in the development of Gaza. There's money in the cleanup. And this is how the banks have made money through wars through centuries. They loan the money out to build up the military industrial complex. They fight the war and they supply with their money. And then they are in charge of the cleanup and the reparations, and they make money on that. And when you look at Gaza, it's a cleanup operation and then a development operation. And high level American investors are going to make a lot of money. Now, if they're already talking about it's going to be a digital high tech society, well, that brings in Palantir and Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, and all the rest of the digital crowd that's forcing data centers down your throat, much to your detriment that we have covered. They're going to make a lot of money on this, and this is the American end of it. So there's an American profiteering element to this from the high tech people connected to Trump, and you can argue they got him elected. Then you have the Zionist lobby from Israel, like AIPAC, controlling 94% of Congress with their donations. And I'll say it again, they're the only unregistered, breaking the law, foreign lobbying entity in America. Every other entity, even the Chinese, they're registered. Now, are we with AIPAC? No, no. And they donate to 94% of all Congress, which is why the amendment that Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, two Congresspeople, introduced to stop Section 224 and the merger of the American-Israeli military, which is the loss of American sovereignty. Make no mistake about it. It's the loss of modern sovereignty. And that amendment couldn't even get a hearing. Well, is that surprising with 94% of Congress on the take? Oh, it's legal. I think it should be illegal. I mean, number one, I've said this many times, we should not allow any politician in any campaign in any way, shape, or form to accept foreign lobbying. This is America. Also, no campaign contributions at all from foreign interests. Ever. Ever. Because right now we have Congress protecting Israeli interests, which is why that amendment couldn't even be heard. If it got heard and got publicized, the American people would become sensitized with it. They'd start putting pressure on their representatives. That's why they didn't even give it a hearing. They wouldn't even read it. They wouldn't even consider it, much less vote on it. And this leads me to something that's going to get me in trouble with the National Security Presidential Memorandum. Number 7 is if I come out here and say we need to unelect everybody, that in the broad language of that executive order could be used against me, saying you're inciting people to bad action. And if one person does a bad act, then they might try to pin it back on me. I'm not going to live in fear. I have the right under the First Amendment to organize politically, and if I think 94% of Congress needs to be gone because they're not serving American interests, they're serving Israeli interests first, that's my political right to say that, although this memorandum says something different. You have a two-tiered animal here. You have the Netanyahu crowd that wants the Greater Israel Project, and you got this government that's subservient to the high-tech bros that want this for their own profit and their own development. Because what they're doing with Gaza, they're going to do throughout the Middle East. In fact, if you look at Saudi Arabia, they've already got the longest 15-minute city in the world. Now, there's two of them in the UK, but they're minimal compared to that one in Saudi Arabia, which is a huge development. And guess who's behind it? Oh, yeah, would that be that Peter guy? Yeah, Peter Thiel, Palantir, and other high-tech bros? Yes, you're being sold out, people. You're being sold out, and the draft is coming. And I want to take and have a second segment on here today about the draft because it is interesting. Here we're on the eve of celebrating America's 250th birthday. Yet we're looking at the evisceration of many of our civil liberties, including the freedom of speech. Supreme Court just destroyed elections going forward. We have an election day, not an election period, because when you have lots of days, lots of things can happen, and we've seen it firsthand. Some of it's been testified to in court under oath. So we have basically the dismantling of key elements of our system. And I might be called an alarmist if many other people, like Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, many professors who I'm in contact with, are saying exactly the same thing. And then we have the election of these socialist idiots. And socialism has never ended anything but poverty and body bags, yet this is spreading throughout the country. Mondami being the head. I wouldn't be surprised one day if he's not a presidential candidate, given the way we're going. If that doesn't keep you up at night, nothing will. But this is the motivation. You wonder why there's Israel first and why TPUSA did a 180 from Charlie that was not Israel first. And we have it on tape on the PBD podcast. Very clear what Charlie felt. He was moving away from Israeli donors. Very clear. They did a browbeating session with him in the Hamptons 13 months ago, and Charlie wouldn't bend. And then people wonder why we look at Israel with suspicious eyes. Oh, wait a minute, there's something else. Do you remember Joe Kent? You may have heard of him. He was the director of counterterrorism, the chief deputy to Tulsi Gabbard, the former head of national intelligence. And they met with Susie Wiles, who ran Netanyahu's 2023 campaign to be the leader of Israel, chief of staff to Trump. Boy, that's not a conflict of interest. I don't know what is. And Kash Patel was there. And Joe Kent made a forceful case. I want all the FBI files on possible Israeli or other foreign involvement in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And they refused. A short time later, if you think Joe Kent resigned on his own volition, I got some swampland in Florida with pythons I want to sell to you. He was kicked out. And when Tulsi Gabbard stood up for him, they showed her the door too. That's how strong this pro-Israeli movement is. Now, even if you didn't think Israel could ever do anything like this, why wouldn't the FBI give up those files to the head of counterterrorism and the director of national intelligence, who's the boss of Kash Patel? He disobeyed a direct order. You don't think there's something to hide there, people? What do you think your average homicide detective would say when they see these kinds of facts? It would be an avenue that they would certainly turn over. Yet we're not even allowed to talk about it. And then when you do talk about, oh, you're anti-Semitic. No, we're anti-evil government officials. I don't care what their ethnicity is or their religion. And I've said it before, and it's kind of funny. They want to call me anti-Semitic, and my grandmother's maiden name is Freiberg. Okay, so this goes on deaf ears. I don't have to prove myself to anybody. The bottom line is Israel should be thoroughly investigated at the governmental level for their role in Charlie Kirk. for their role in the Board of Peace, for their role in merging American military. And Netanyahu's bragging in his own country, it was his idea. And now it's being forced down our throat. And campaign donations from AIPAC, avoidance of condemnation from groups like the ADL. So you better fall into line, Congressperson. Do what we tell you. The money will flow. Things will be bountiful for you and your family. Just shut up about Charlie Kirk. Shut up about Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act. Am I making a compelling case that we have been sold out? You, the American citizen? Well, wait till I talk to you about the draft and I look at draft precedents around the country, around the world. In the country, it's in the past. We'll go back to the Vietnam War. Around the world, it's going on today, and it's being supported by your tax dollars. Stay tuned. That's what's coming in the next segment. Well, by the way, if you're hearing this in social media, and you may be hearing it in podcasts, great, share it. We love that. Thank you. But we're doing quite well there. We're in the top 0.5% of the world. But in some social media, this isn't going to get the light of day. Come here every day. We do the same thing. We enlighten you with as factual of information as we can. And we are very Christian oriented, so you're not going to hear rhetoric like get out the pitchforks and let's rise up. Oh, we can rise up. We just don't have to be violent. And I do think we need to have scripture on our side. But there are times when civil disobedience is allowed. Just go to the book of Timothy. Tells you quite clearly. Obey the laws of God over the laws of man when there's a conflict. And right now we got a huge conflict. I would say 20,000 children victims in Gaza is a pretty good reason to stand up to this tyranny, to oppose Section 224, because you're marrying the people who did what they did in Gaza. Birds of a feather flock together. And my dad used to say an old Navy saying, and I'll clean it up. He used to say, son, choose your friends carefully because if you roll in excrement, you're going to start to stink. And the Netanyahu administration fits that old saying quite well. Stay tuned for more on the draft.